Yeah. So let's do the officials first of all. I'm going to read your bio that you sent me. Very impressive sounding biography here. So who is Pell, aka Pelego Powell, aka Pell, is the creative and artistic director of Aston Performing Arts Academy, or APAA, or APA. Do you call it APA for short?
Yeah, but some people call it APA, some people call it APA.
Okay.
Just
All right. Okay. All right. So, as the artistic director for the past 15 years, Pell has been responsible for the overall development of APA's students and development managers, whilst strategically moving the organization forward. What's more, Pell is an assistant head teacher within a thriving inner city primary school in Birmingham. Pell has been teaching for the past 11 years and is a huge advocate for education, always seeking ways to maximize educational opportunities, all this stuff we're going to be getting into later. One of Pell's biggest passions is inclusion, diversity, and equity within education. Over the years, Pell has worked directly and indirectly with over 15,000 young people with no signs of stopping anytime soon. So, wow. All right, welcome aboard. Tell me a little bit about this 15,000 figure. That's pretty amazing to hear.
Started. I should have said it in my bio. I'm a twin. And I think
Yes. Sure.
That she's just logged in. Also. So yeah, working with 15,000 people started maybe, I would say, 20 odd years ago. At the age, I was only 15, 16. My auntie was a primary school teacher, and we just, myself and my brother, we just had a passion for performing arts, for dance and for singing and for choirs. And we kind of went into that school for about a year initially to start. We did lots of performing arts. So we ran our after school club, or very, very busy, every week ran that after school club. And then lots of different primary schools around the sector cottoned on and thought, oh, this is something that I could do. And when we're looking back 20 years, there wasn't as many red tape in terms of making sure you've had all the contracts in and CBSs and everything else. So it was quite easy and quite easy for us, without even a national insurance number, to go in and do lots of different workshops and stuff. And we did that around Birmingham for maybe, I would say, I'm sure you're going to have to help me out here, maybe 3-4 years we started doing that. And that's when I realised I had a love for teaching. So when I was old enough, I then went into teaching and started my teaching journey. And alongside that, simultaneously, we then joined Aston Performing Arts Academy, which you read out in the bio. And that's been amazing, affecting the lives of thousands of young people. And obviously teaching. I actually think I just plucked 15,000 out of the air, disclaimer. I actually that. But
wow. Fantastic. And so your brother, True, he does the same, your twin brother who's with us, he does the same, he's in the same similar field now?
So we work together within Aston Performing Arts Academy. So, and just so people know, Aston Performing Arts Academy, that we aim to empower the lives of young people, and we use the vehicle of creative and performing arts. It's the best organisation, and it's been going for 20 years. And it's an amazing, it's amazing in Brum, it's amazing nationally. So that's what we do together. But then outside of that, True is an entrepreneur in his own right. So he then manages another kind of child-friendly child salon. He also does runs lots of businesses in terms of event businesses, and he runs, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later, the Multicultural Awards, celebrating unsung heroes of nationally. So he's very, very a community leader in that. And then I veered off and I went more into education. I'm a teacher, then a middle leader, then an assistant head teacher, etc., etc., etc.
Brilliant. And what are you from Aston? Is that what part of
Um,
Birmingham you're from?
I'm actually from Newtown,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and it's similar. It's kind of next door, if you like, to Aston.
I used to,
Different.
yeah, yes, I know. I used to, so I went to uni in Birmingham. I went to
Oh,
Birmingham University. Yeah, years ago, years ago. And one of the places I lived in briefly was Newtown. I think it was Newtown. Yeah, like
okay.
very close to the city centre, isn't it? Like
Yeah, very
just
close.
around, yeah. So, so okay, so you're from Newtown. I mean, you're a black man, very obviously you and your brother, both of you go-getters, very community involved and entrepreneurial in different kind of ways as well. How did that come about? How did you get into that kind of mindset at 15 to think of setting up the performing arts kind of
Um,
thing?
you know what? We've always had, even before we even knew it, we've always had a love for performing arts, but B, my brother was always an entrepreneur, and I was always that artistic developer. And I think it started when I
Okay.
was about 8, maybe 7 or 8, and living obviously in Newtown, opportunities were very sparse, and we kind of just in the morning. I say morning, but we kind of just decided to be. True decided to be an entrepreneur, and I decided to be a kind of artistic developer, and that came about by we ran our own kind of talent show. Um, we knew that we had a love for passion and a passion for performing arts, and so True decided to just say to people around the area, we're having a talent show, and if you want, I think we charged, I can't remember the cost. True, you're gonna have to help me. I don't know if it was 20p or 50p. It was one and 50p, and it was it was in a 6 weeks holiday, and we kind of had like 2 weeks to prepare. So we were working with different groups in around the area, and we put on an running order, and the talent show happened, and it was actually really, really successful. And this was before we even knew that actually 20 odd years later we'll be doing this as a kind of business. We'll be doing it as for our love and as a business.
Mm,
Where it all started, and we've always loved performing arts and and just singing and dancing, and it's always been in our blood, and particularly in a
mm,
like Aston, when, if you can imagine, 25 years ago, that wasn't seen as the masculine thing to do. That wasn't seen as
mm,
the thing to do. Um,
yeah.
and we were often ridiculed. We were often told that we can't do it, and blah, blah,
Mm,
blah. And actually, we set out to say, we want to make a difference. We want to change that um, that kind of philosophy of boys not being able to sing and dance, of masculinity being only seen in sports, and actually
mm,
is seen through all sorts and through all different art forms. And we wanted to change that notion.
yeah. And do you find so that I suppose it's been a long time, but do you find that the children who take part, the youth that take part, are they what sex are they generally? Like male,
So
mostly female. Yeah.
when we first started, it was all female. True, my brother just put in Dana song SWV. I do remember that actually. Uh, and one standing from Escape. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah, both
Yeah,
tunes.
but no, predominantly it's females that come to our organisation now. We
Mm,
very much have males. And some of the males are amazing, and I would love more.
mm,
We're still continuing on breaking down. I'd love a bit.
yeah,
At the moment, we're looking at like 75-25 ratio.
yeah. Very interesting. And what do you think that's about then? Like this idea of boys and men, like or dance and kind of, I suppose, what would you call it? Physical, bodily kind of expression and whatnot. What do you think that's about? Where does that come from? This.
I think because we were getting there, we were on an upward trajectory before, like I would say about 8 years ago, and before social media was an actual like thing. Before you
Right.
your Twitters and all of these things, Facebooks. we were kind of like getting there with our boys, and at one point we were very lucrative with boys, and one of our key is seeing performing arts as expressive and cool, and social media has now started to have an influence, and that kind of, I would say, that kind of outlook has started to decrease and a little bit, and so are dwindling a little bit. I don't know what it is. I don't think, and I think it's everything. It's society. It's society deeming that sports is for boys and art is for girls, and it's just through the portrayal of it. And I would love to change that notion, and I think we are, but it's just
you have children, right? You've got
3.
How many? 3 boys.
Yeah, 3 boys.
Wow. Okay.
15, 9, and 7. It was just
okay. Wow. Okay. So I've got 2 boys, younger than that though, 4 and 2. So are they into arts, the performing arts, and are they comfortable too? If they,
they try not to be. They try not. There's this, we've got APA today, Dad. I don't want to go, and blah 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 blah, and that's because of their older brother. But when they actually get there, they absolutely love it. And then when they're coming home in the car, you can just hear the enthusiasm and the love and the passion that they've got for it. But I think in keeping with the coolness of arts being for girls and sports being for boys, they're battling with that. So we're just trying to coach and help them at the moment.
Yeah, and it's like you say, you started 25 years ago. I mean, that's well before even like your diverse, the diversity, the dance things on, the talent shows and all that sort of stuff. And it seems surprising. I'm a bit surprised to hear it's still so kind of genderized or stigmatized in that kind of way. So you're also a head teacher. Assistant head teacher, which is, that's as good as head teacher you're a very, very senior teacher. You've been doing that for some years now as well.
Oh, yeah.
Was it 11 years you've been teaching?
Yeah, probably 12 now, because obviously that year's just gone, so probably about 12 years.
Yeah, fantastic. And what made you get into the teaching? And
well, I always knew, and this is something that we're going to talk about later, but I always knew that I had a passion for working with young people.
Yeah.
One thing I always knew and I always wanted to do. And when I went to uni, I studied criminology and sociology.
Okay.
I wanted to be working with young offenders. And part of my course, we had to go into a young offenders institution. And just to see, part of it, just to see whether you like it, blah, 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 blah. And I went into there, and honestly, within the first, I was told by one of the young offenders to literally go and suck him on. Like, I'm sorry if he was on there, but literally told, and swearing and very, very confrontational. And I was just like, okay. That evening, I spoke to True actually, and I was like, is this actually something I want to do? Because that person, I could see in his eyes, but it was too late. It was far too late to have any sort of influence or impact or anything on his life. His life has already been mapped out, and I didn't want to go into somewhere and babysit or manage, because that's not really what I wanted to do. So I had long thoughts about, okay, what do I want to do? And then I realized actually teaching is a very, very good profession for having an influence, having an impact on young people. And then going even beyond that, because, you get into secondary school and you think, 10, 11, it's a little bit too late to have that impact. I thought, I want to do primary school, because I can set from a very early age, I can put in place or set in stone, or however you want to look at it, not just a career path, but have an imprint on well-being and confidence and all of those things. And I guess that's what started And that's when I realised I actually wanted to be a primary school teacher. And then it kind of just changed, and I rerouted my career path and direction
to primary school. Really interesting you say about the age, you know, it being too late when they're, it's clearly too late, you're saying, when they're 16, 17, 18. And, you know, if people have ended up in young offenders institutions, as they're called. But also it's too late at even 9, 10, 10, 11, you think, as far as setting them foundational, you said confidence was one thing that stood out, what you just said there as well. Like, tell me a little bit more, if you could, about that perspective.
The reason why I went for primary school, because you become, if you like, their second parent. And just in the eyes of primary school children, they look up to you so much. That you are their superheroes, you are their role models. If you like, you're, as I say, you're their second parent. When you go older up, when you reach the ages of 15, your body changes. You're going through all these hormonal changes. You have a bigger influence from your peers, from social media, from everything around you. Your understanding is a lot more richer. So I'm not saying you can't be a super 15, but it's a lot more difficult. You really have to. It's when they're younger, it's very much face value. You tell them what they want to hear, and they're lapping it up. When you're older, you have to prove it. And being a teacher in that kind of setting, with all the red tape that you have, with safeguarding, which is the right thing to do, it takes a little bit longer and a lot more, I would say, a lot more digging, a lot more persistence, and a lot more patience. It can be done, but I think it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. And then interestingly, my son's about to go to start school this next month. He's starting school in September, and I can see the changes that, you know, he's going through, as far as he's obviously having some kind of, I don't know, testosterone surge or something, because he's, you know, yeah. So you know all about how, you know, the challenges that come up at that kind of age, and so on. Do you teach in Aston as well, or in?
Not far from Aston, so I still teach, you know, in an inner city area. That I will teach, I will always teach in an inner city area, and where predominantly are minorities of Asian or Black children. I will never teach in an affluent area, and not because it's more because just a personal choice. I feel like the children that I teach, I can relate more to, because of my upbringing and because of where I was, and I think that it's key, and I think it's so important when teachers are appointed within a school, that the teachers really research thoroughly the school in which they're applying for, research the community, and alongside that, for the school to put onus on more questions around the community, what they know of, about what the prospective teachers know of the community. And I say that because I remember not too long ago, probably just before, I had a teacher who was absolutely mortified when she came the following day, because there was a shooting outside of our school. Just several yards out from our school. And that's a regular occurrence outside of our school. And you know, you get syringes and all sorts, drugs and violence and all sorts. And because he was so alarmed, it kind of made me think, what do you think you're coming into? Because our children need you to understand the community in which you are serving. And some of their siblings are probably in gangs, are probably in prison, are probably dealing with drugs. And we have to understand that as educators, because by understanding it, we're then able to deal with it. If we don't understand it, then we won't be able to deal with it. And it just made me just the dangers of recruitment, within schools,
Mm.
and not necessarily just from the teachers, but also from the actual schools, and what that means.
Yeah, that's deep. And so I know from experience that the teaching profession generally is very female oriented. And is that similar? Is that what is that your experience as well? That most teachers tend to be
Yeah,
female?
I've worked in 4 different schools, and the school that I'm currently in now is the most diverse in terms of black educators, and a kind of ratio of female and male split. I've worked
Yeah.
in a school where it's majority female. I've applied to a school where it's all female, and lo and behold, I didn't get the job. But of course, I'm a very strong email, and I CC'd in the local education authority about representation. But I go off. My second school was very rich and diverse, and my last school where I'm at now is very rich and diverse. But then my first school and middle school wasn't. So it's a kind of a split.
Yeah. Okay. I want to just read this comment out because I think it's a really good comment. This is from JDL MX. Hope that's the right thing. So they said, Pell and True have been my directors since I was 14. They're 24 now. They are responsible for so much of my personal and professional growth. Everyone deserves a mentor teacher like Pell.
Oh, don't let me start bawling on here today. Oh, gosh, I love it.
That's a wonderful, wonderful testimony right there. So this kind of goes a little bit into the talking about diversity in schooling and inclusion. I suppose the majority of the teachers, or you tell me, I suppose, you were talking about how these teachers or these people, staff members who are not used to the phenomenon of there's been a shooting or there's been a stabbing or there's been there's the police, all these things. As you say, I grew up in a similar kind of area in London as well. And you're right, you're just familiar with these things are just part of the day-to-day kind of hustle and bustle of, sadly, day-to-day hustle and bustle of inner city living. So the majority of the teachers that you're working with, are from outside, not from inner city backgrounds, not from that specific area as well?
No, that was only one of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because as leadership, we're very, very good at ensuring that we've got the right teachers in place.
Good. Yeah.
But some leaders, and the True's on the line now, but there are, particularly in this children's previous school, doesn't consider representation as important, doesn't consider understanding the community as important. What's important for some leaders is, and I say this in the nicest respect, is pedagogy and teaching and learning, and strictly that. So are you a good teacher? Are you able, do you understand assessment and all the key things of good teaching and learning? And obviously, and miss the fact that the community is an integral part, understanding the children is an integral part to teaching and learning. And there are some leaders who just focus on that and miss the B, and will argue that they are good teachers. And I say that because in my brother's past school, when approached and told, actually, you've got no teachers in this school who are black. You've got none at all, and representation matters. And the response that we were given was, well, I couldn't find any good black teachers. And I just thought, you are completely missing the mark. Number one, there are plenty of good black teachers. You just need to widen your actual search. Two, if it was my child, I would easily have a black mediocre teacher than an excellent white teacher.
Oh, tell me more. Why is that then? Tell me more about that.
Teaching is not about teaching, it's about learning. And my child would learn better from someone who looks like them, who they can identify with. So in that sense, if a child is able to learn, then that in my opinion constitutes as an excellent teacher. Because, and sometimes we put too much onus on the actual teaching and not the learning. And we've got to go for to be a good teacher, you have to learn. So if my class was in an environment where there was a white teacher, I'm just going to be and say it, and they weren't as learning as much as they would have done if that teacher was black, then could you argue that that teacher is an excellent teacher?
Did you? What was that? Did you make a distinction between being an educator and teaching and learning? What was that distinction you made there?
Yeah, the distinction I've made is, how could you be an excellent teacher if you haven't got good learning in your class?
Yeah,
that's it's so important, because you could do everything right by the book. Everything right by the book, but you may have that one child in your class that isn't learning at their optimum. And that could be for a host of reasons. And one of the reasons that we must consider as educators is race. We must consider gender. We must consider these reasons to optimize and maximize every single learning opportunity. And by not considering that, then again, are we giving the best possible service to the students in the classroom?
Okay. And so pivoting a little bit again, what's been your experience with regard to, so one of the things I said it'd be good for us to talk about is boys, black boys in particular, African boys, African Caribbean boys in schools. What have you seen? And what are your reflections and so far?
It's a hard one. And the reason why it's a hard one, because I recognise that I'm actually in the system. And I also recognise that I'm talking within the system, but I understand that the only way change will happen is if people like myself are willing enough to step out and say, actually, I've seen some things that are not okay, that are not right. So I'll give you an example. In my very, very first year of teaching at my very, very first school, I remember walking down the hall. I was an NQT, that's me, newly qualified teacher. Yeah. And I remember walking down the hall and seeing one of my boys outside of the head teacher's office, like he's a parent, like one of my boys. I'm like, oh, cool, you know, you hail him up, etc., etc. And I was like, yes, you know, you don't normally see one of your boys in an inner city outside of a head teacher's office. So I knew it was probably for his child. And, okay. And he was like, oh, I'm just coming to see the head teacher about my child, blah, 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 blah. So I said, oh, shout me afterwards to let me know what's happening. Anyway, lo and behold, he didn't call me about 7 o'clock. I then called him at about 7:30, and I said, oh, you know, what was happening, and is everything okay? And he turned around and said, his son has been permanently excluded. And I said, okay, because I know that that's massive, that's huge. And we could talk about permanent exclusions a bit later. But for me, it's huge. That's saying that you've tried everything and nothing has worked. So I was a little bit upset about it. But the reason why I was deeply, deeply caught up about it, and it really caught my soul, is because guess how old the child was?
Was this in primary? 9?
This child was in reception, so he was no older than 5. And he was permanently excluded. Even now, I just get chills, because it cuts me to think that his life was taken away from him before he even began. And we did that as educators. We you know, that as our role, we failed this young man. Luckily, I see this young man now, and I see his dad quite frequently, and we speak, and he's doing well. He's in an apprenticeship, having an apprenticeship and everything else, and he managed to get his life back. But then the thousands, you know, the 4 times more likely children who don't have that support network. What of them? What are we doing to these young black boys? And I vowed at that point that I would never work in a school that sees exclusions and permanent exclusions as a way to operate. And that's one of my questions when I interview. What is your stance? Where's your behaviour policy? And what is your stance on exclusions? Unfortunately, I have seen many more exclusions, or maybe one more permanent exclusion of yet another black child, another black Afro-Caribbean. But it's my experience of that is I take it very, very seriously. And anyone that works with me will tell you, I would try and do everything possibly to ensure that children, and particularly black children, have the best possible opportunity with it.
Good. Interesting. You mentioned about the exclusions, because I think was it a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago, Southwark, I think it was, or one of these South London boroughs in South London came out and announced that they're no longer going to exclude children. Yeah. So what's the I guess to sort of what's the idea behind that? Because I've known, we all grew up in a school system, and exclusion was always like a stick right at the end, obviously very, very far down the road, but you knew that we all knew people who were excluded from schools and so forth. Removing that, what's the idea behind not doing that anymore? Or I suppose another way to put it is what's the idea behind how do exclusions generally come about, and what's the danger of the exclusions, and then what can schools do then if they don't have exclusion as a tool in their armory to sort out whatever they're trying to sort out?
Right, the first thing schools need to have is a very, very clear policy. They need to have a very clear, not just behaviour policy, but also an understanding of social awareness, racial awareness, and have that as a policy, because there is a between permanent exclusions and Afro-Caribbeans. Afro-Caribbean black children are 4 times more likely to be permanently excluded. Not twice more, like 4 times more likely. That's factual. So, and with all the information that you've seen with Child Q and everything else, the adultification of black children is real, and we have to understand those correlations first. That's the very first thing. The idea of making sure that exclusions are the very, very last resort is they need to be held, and schools need to be held accountable. And this is where I think parents need to be clued upon. If you haven't already, 2017 DfE exclusion policy, it's now being ratified. There's a new one just come out July 2022. Read that back to front. It is a good 80-page document, but it's so important for you to understand exactly what you have to do, or what schools have to do before excluding, and hold them to account. So, for instance, if a school permanently excludes your child and they haven't done everything possibly, so for instance, a reduced timetable, what outside agencies have they brought in? Is there a behaviour plan? Are there risk assessments in place? Is the pastoral team involved, and are they having an impact? Is the head teacher involved? Are parents involved? Have you had these conversations with parents? And key is the behaviour policy. Where in the behaviour policy have the child breathe? Where in the behaviour policy have the child breathe? How do you know? Has the investigation been conducted thoroughly and fairly and not within bias? Who have they spoken to? Like, all of these things matter, and that's where the DfE guidance comes in. Once you've done that, hold the school to account, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do that. And I would also say, and like to point out, every single parent has the right to request their child's information. Every single parent, and that's from Subject Access Request, which is the 2000.
Yeah.
I think it's 2000.
18.
Some sort of guidance.
Yeah.
Because there has to be, for a permanent exclusion, there has to be a series of events that have led to it, unless it completely breaches the behaviour policy with gross misconduct or what have you, which is a very but even before, there has to be a series. So request that. See what your child is doing at school. Have a thorough understanding of what your child's doing at school, and hold the school to account for it. And that's parents' responsibility. And sometimes, and I've seen it, a child would be excluded, and there isn't any accountability. There isn't any, right, tell me why, what have you done, etc., etc. And I think it's barbaric, because you must be mad if my child is going to be excluded and I ain't going to do everything in my power possible to hold you to account as to what you haven't done and why you failed my child. Because at the end of the day, and we've got, particularly in primary schools, children are children. They are. And they're learning. And it's important that we have that in our forefront.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the comments. I'm trying to read some of the
Yeah. Some really good comments coming in, actually.
Really good comments coming through. So, say for that one, we assist really good parents, role models. Teachers don't know how to deal with black kids.
Yeah, that's actually a point, because you mentioned the adultification of black children, and I've seen some. There's one study I've seen where they put like eye tracking technology on. I mean, this isn't adultification per se, but they put eye tracking technology on some participants in the study, teachers who included some black teachers in America, in the US, and they basically tracked who, they put like some children in a situation, a classroom situation, and got them to what was it? They were tracking where they're looking, which children they were giving most attention to, and I think they asked them to like press a button or something whenever they saw challenging behavior happening. And what they found, I'm probably misremembering, but they found that the majority of times they were picking the black boy. And most of the time, even where there wasn't any challenging behavior at all, but they were, in their minds, they were like, yeah, this is challenging behavior. So that is a worry, particularly for as a dad of two black boys. It's a worry to know that that's a sign, that's an indication of what some of these teachers are, what they're bringing when they're teaching our children. They're bringing a suspicion.
Exactly, and it's that unconscious bias, because it's adultification, but it's also criminalization. It's also, your child is the criminal because he's black, and that is and to some teachers who don't understand the community, see your blackness as a weapon, and that is the most harmful thing, and it's so hard. It's difficult. It's the whole thing around, because what we're essentially asking is, we're asking for teachers to now be open to the prospect that they could be racist. And I know from my experience, if I said that to some of my teachers, it's, oh no, how could I? I possibly couldn't. And actually, I have biases, we all have biases. And until we understand that, there is nothing it wouldn't be enough to protect our black children. I shout for racial awareness, up-to-date training for every single educator, black, white, or indifferent. We all need it. It is not okay to be to not be aware of what's happening in the classroom. Not okay to just put up a black square and say, I'm not racist. It's not okay to say I'm not racist because I've got black friends or I'm going out with a black girlfriend or whatever the case may be. Until you understand the intricacies of racism, until you understand that racism is built in the infrastructure of our education, health, criminal justice, everything, until you really understand that, then there is nowhere that we can go. And the only way that will be understood is if people are told. Willful ignorance is no longer a reason. You can't just be ignorant. We have to now go out there and see the leaders. It's important that they push this agenda. The leaders of education, your very first thing on your school development plan, your very, very first thing should be social justice. How are you ensuring that your school has equity, equality, and inclusion at the forefront? How are you ensuring that? And the only way you can do that is through your school development plan and the leaders taking that on and saying, right, this is what we need. In exactly the same way that most leaders now have looked at mental health as a key to put on their school development plan. Most leaders have done that. We have to do the same for racial awareness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I keep saying it's interesting. It's all interesting. But you can have, one of the things that made me think of is you can have policies, you can have guidance documents, you can have, you can have all this sort of paperwork and the tick the boxes of all those sorts of things. But push comes to shove, it does need to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like people come into contact with other people, and that's where you need the sort of, people's behaviors to change. And I suppose that I've seen it with nursery to an extent, and I'm sure I see it in school as well. And being a parent, I know that you can have all the lofty ideas in your head as much as you want. As a parent, say, I'm going to do this is how I'm going to be with my children. They're going to be so well fed. We're only going to eat oats every day. And But then the day to day, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever it might be. But with the interaction with children on a daily basis, the second by second, minute by minute, it eats up your strategy. It can eat up your ideas for breakfast, and then it's almost like on a guttural level. Like, there's this child here, and this child is annoying the hell out of me. That's where as a parent, that's where now, okay, this is where the real learning for you as a parent comes in. To control yourself and to act in line with your values and your principles. And I suppose in schools, it's a similar thing, particularly with all children, but particularly with black children, for teachers who are not black. Yes, the teaching profession generally is very left-wing, would consider itself very socially progressive and so forth, politically speaking. And yet, here we are,
Here we are. You know what's startling, and you probably go on to it, but I preach on about representation, but sometimes it's hard because when you look at the stats, there's 2% of teachers, 2% of black teachers within the UK. That's it. And I'm not talking about leaders. I'm talking about just teachers in general. You break that down even further, and then you see, looking at senior leaders, you're looking at something like 0.2%. It's not even 1%, not even 0.5%. 0.2%. And I dread to think what that would be for males. This is just black leaders, but then you start to look at males and break that down. Now, if we can't even get to 0.5% of senior leaders within education, how do we ensure representation? Because to be fair to schools, they can't just click their fingers and have a black person just miraculously show up. If they're not there, because they tell us that they're not there, then it's difficult for them to recruit them. So it's a double-edged sword. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, there is accountability for schools, and recruitment policy is key. And in there has to be some attempt to ensure that you are trying to recruit black teachers. But also, the other side of the spectrum is that we have to change, and parents and everybody and community leaders and everybody else have to encourage our children that they can. And sometimes in some areas of our society, children don't think that they can. Some children, I in a class, and some children, when asking what they want to be, I get responses like barber, and I'm not disrespecting barbers at all, because they don't feel that's what they see, and they don't feel like they can be teachers. And that's our jobs to have those, and I say ours, but it's our jobs to ensure that our children have access to those career days, to ensure that we are bringing in the right people in the right spaces, and for parents to make sure that they are bringing in those leaders, those doctors, those lawyers, so that our children see it and then want to achieve it, want to be it. Because I feel like we're in this cycle, we're in this pit. I don't know about you, but I feel like we've been on zero. I feel like we've been on 2% for the longest. I feel like black educators within England at that 2% mark for the longest of years. And come on, we need to be strategical. We need to, right, by 2025 we're then on 5%, and then by and yes, this is down to us, but again, higher up again, just feels like I'm talking on, but it's also down to the government.
Yeah.
What are they doing to ensure that strategical target is being met? And who will hold it out?
Yeah. On the topic of holding to account and parents, so some of the comments, I think your brother made a comment about how parents need to educate and need to be made aware of how do you hold teachers to account. And I suppose this is one of my things. As I said, my oldest is going to school next month, and yeah, it is actually like, maybe this is something we could talk about in future conversations, perhaps in more detail. But what are some of the bits of advice maybe that you would give to parents about, where do you start as far as engaging with the school? Do you, for example, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, I'll just ring them up and just say, oh, I'd like to come in and meet their head, or like meet the teachers who are going to be teaching my child, or who are teaching my child, get an idea about what the curriculum is. Because one of my things, sorry, long-winded question, but the reasons that me and you came into contact was following my video about the color monsters and the whole use of black as a negative emotion in this book, and how my son had a short period where he was saying he didn't want to be black because black is scary, because scary is the color of black in this color monsters book. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Yeah. And I was going to say, what was my point? Yeah. So one of the things that made me think was, with school, I would be wanting, for example, to go in and maybe like just see what books they're going to be using and have an idea of, have they got books in there that are inclusive, for example, and are there any books in it? If I have a concern, how would I raise that with the teachers and so forth? So any advice you could give me and parents generally now would be good.
The first thing I will say, there's a couple of things that you need to do, and I've mentioned it before. Be aware of all the policies, not just the school policies, but the DfE guidance because there's probably guidance for everything. So read them top to bottom, understand them, understand what the school should be doing, because that's what you'll hold them to account for.
Right.
Second thing I will say is, we have to be on boards. So if if you can possibly be a school governor within your child's school, please do so. I am a school governor, and I'm not a. I wouldn't say I am a school governor that's constantly there. I'm an associate school governor, so that means that I'm not an official governor, but I do everything governance within the school, which means I didn't have to do the whole application and then be chosen and etc., because it is a long process to be a school governor.
Okay.
But you can actually be an associate governor. So please look into that.
Okay.
Offer your if you sense something's not right, the art of communication. It's so important to speak to people. And now that we've got social media, it's so easy to find an educator on the other end of a keyboard. It's so easy. And my inbox is always open. Over the past couple of years, I've probably helped 5 or 6 families with their children who's been permanently excluded or suspended, all obviously rescinded, which has been amazing.
Brilliant.
But it does take time because it's me looking through the policies and guidance and holding the schools to account. So if you know educators who you know will be there and who will protect you and defend you, speak to them. If you then arrange a meeting with the school, which should always be the first step because you want to sort things out, etc., bring someone along with you. And it doesn't necessarily need to be an educator, but someone who you know that, again, has your back and has read the policies and knows schooling, that knows the system. And I think these things are so important because schools will try their utmost best to sweep things under the carpet, to push things aside, because their lives are easier. They wouldn't want to be made hard. And I'm the same, I'm guilty of it. How do I make my life easier working within an institution? But as I say, parents have absolute right, and we are servicing the parents. That's our job. Our job is to service our children and parents. You know, in some ways, I see it as the parents are my employers, the stakeholders, but they're my, because they're allowing their children to be with us 6 hours a day. That's huge. That's massive. But we've got to make sure that we're doing things right. So just to the answer to your question, those key 3 things I would recommend you do. I know that I think it was Semilia and True that put a message in the group to say if we could put in some guidance or come up with some for parents as to how to help their children. You mentioned it before, but I would say quick tips: read the policies, number 1. Join the governance board if you can, number 2, and speak to educators who you know that will have your back, that will be there, you know, with you. Those are the kind of 3 things I will say.
Yeah, brilliant, good. And I suppose it'd be interesting to know, as we wind up soonish, it'll be interesting to know what your future plans with regard to all of this sort of stuff. So you've expressed a fair amount of frustration with regard to aspects of the schooling system, and you know, blockages with regard to staffing and, you know, recruitment and all that sort of stuff. What are you going to do about it? What are some of your plans going forward? Obviously, you're doing a lot. You've got your APA and so forth, but I imagine you're someone who's got some plans, some ideas.
Yeah, my plan is very simple: to change things from top down. And I don't want to say it's never bottom up, but to change things from bottom up, which is kind of where I think I'm now, is a lot more difficult and a lot more time consuming. And when I say down, I'm talking about Department for Education, government down. I'm talking about working within these offices that are able to put in these policies and legislations So the biggest thing I will say is social awareness, racial awareness. Now, someone at the top, working in schools, someone at the top has made mental health a priority and has enforced that this has to be in your SDP plan, because it has to be made a priority. Somewhere at the top, someone has said that mental health, by 2025, at least one person in your organisation, in your schooling institution, has to have official DFE training on mental health, and has to be a mental health lead. Someone has said that. My argument is, why don't we do the same for social awareness, racial awareness? And we can, but it's going to take somebody to do it. Now, we can badger on and on and on about with us leaders or teachers doing it within their own institutions, etc., etc. How many children does that affect in the grand scheme of things? A very, very small proportion. By working higher up and changing things top down, looking at those policies would accelerate that process, would accelerate that to non-end. And that's kind of where I want to, that's where I see myself. Love working with children, but how do I impact and influence millions as opposed to hundreds?
Yeah, fantastic. And that's the mindset, and you're exactly right. It's leveraging, and it's leverage. You know, the same amount of effort can have much bigger kind of impacts if you're working with at the right level. Fantastic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, lovely. It was webinars when I attended the parent. Actually, no statutory guidance. It was really helpful just showing it. That's lovely. That is lovely. I wonder if we can if you've got a link for that Tiny Travels. If not, then we probably couldn't put it together. But I love the fact that it's statutory and non-statutory, because it's so important. And again, these guidance are sometimes they're very clever, because looking at certain terminology like should and must, they're completely different, even though, you know what I mean. And we've done that, and I've done that with some of the exclusions that I've on the panels that I've sat on, and schools will use that and say, well, actually, it only says I should. And it's good practice. Why put it in if you're not going to follow it? So, but they could, and there's a difference between lawful and unlawful, and all of those things. So that's why I say it's important to talk to people, because these little bits of terminology can, if you're not aware of them, or if you're not clued up, it can trip you up, because I've been tripped up a few times. So just ensure that you're talking to people, I would say, and the right people. Yeah.
And so the black nurse is Liz Pemberton. Is she the
nursery manager?
Black nursery manager. Yeah. I've been in touch with her recently. She's doing some amazing work. And I guess that'll be maybe a good thing to just talk about before we go is because I can imagine for a lot of parents, like, you know, a lot of parents aren't university, you know, they're not used to, you know, they're not university educated. They're potentially not used to liaising with professionals and, you know, bureaucrats, if you like. And also many parents don't speak English as their first language, you know, haven't been here long, have lots of other challenges, economic challenges and so forth. So I can imagine for a lot of them, as kind of bewildering as sort of all of this sort of stuff might sound for me, as someone who's frankly, you know, in a certain kind of social world, that I'm used to dealing with these kinds of people. I work in these kind of similar settings. I have worked in education before. Are there any places that you'd suggest for parents that they can go as a start to just get some information at least, or you
know, there are a lot social media and Twitter. So you've got, depending on so you've got things like no more exclusions, which are again on Twitter, and I think I used them before when I was dealing with an exclusion. Free service, brilliant, and we're able to give her their advice.
No more exclusions.
No more exclusions. It's on Twitter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But most of the groups that I go to, like the Black Leadership Group and the Black Equity and Diversity Group, most of these groups I just go on social media and mostly you just type it in the hashtag and it comes up, and then you're able to get advice from them. But what I would also say and point out is, and what people sometimes don't often.
Bit of buffering going on there. Thank you everyone for the comments, by the way, and the links and things that people are posting. Really useful.
You know if your picnic is bad breed and then they're expelled or what have you, and you just think your kids. But
Pell, you're buffering a bit on my end. I don't know if hopefully that's not my internet. Hello. Let's have a look. All right, not sure if we're still streaming live. Oh, Pell has left the building. Okay. Yeah, he's been buffering. Hopefully he'll just join us back again. And we can pick up what he was talking about with regard to the different resources, different places that we can go to. But you mentioned no more exclusions being one. One thing I'd say that I've found is that it's amazing the amount of advice and the amount of insights and so forth you can get from social media. Instagram in particular, I've found for the parenting stuff, there's an incredible amount of useful folks who are putting out useful content on here. So that's a real something that hopefully makes things a lot easier than it would have been 10 years ago and certainly 20 years ago with regard to getting advice. But I definitely think that when Pell comes back, I definitely want to ask him if he'll be happy to, oh, here we go, he's back now. I definitely think I'd like to ask him if he'll be happy to come back and start to give a few more bits of advice, like to parents on these things. Pell,
sorry,
welcome back. That's all right. That's all right. Your broadband supplier, is the master in this instance.
No. terrible. Virgin.
Yeah, same here. So okay. You were talking about some of the different places, spots that we can go on social media and so forth to get some advice and input.
Yeah.
And
I was just saying that like mostly on social media, but what I would also say is the power of gut instinct, the power of knowing that's when something doesn't sit right. I mean, if your picnic is bad breed, so if something was to happen in school and you're like, yeah, I know, but you also know when something doesn't sit right. And if that is, don't just sit on it. You must seek some sort of help, whether that's doing it yourself or going on social media. And literally, I've got to say, you are your child's superhero. I mentioned it was actually my brother that said that maybe a few weeks ago when he received his honorary doctorate. So thank you, Drew. And he mentioned that our mum was our superhero. And
I saw that video.
And she was. And for every child out there, parents, you are guardians, you are your child's superhero. And if you don't fight for them, who would? And sometimes fighting is doing the things that you're uncomfortable with, but you don't have to do it. And that's why I say seek social media. Please do, because I do, and it's been amazing.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much there, man. So much. It's a big world. Parenting, teaching, the interaction between parents and teachers, schools and parents. It's enormous, isn't it? And so
it is, bro. It is. I cannot lie to you. and there's so much to unpack. I've changed. I'm not the same person. Before, my job was to go into work, teach, and leave. Now I've
Mm.
just got this passion for equality and inclusion and diversity, and actually, it's since the passing of George Floyd that has and lockdown, and it's just opened my eyes to the systemic and structural racism of schools. And I'll be the first to say it. I work in education, and I understand how the damaging effects it has on black children, black boys in particular. I'm tempted to take my boys out and homeschool them, and I'm
Okay.
teetering with that option. Um,
Okay.
I'm literally seeing how they get on. My wife has currently left work, and we're watching to see how they get on come December. And I've already had this conversation with my children's teachers and the head teacher about what I expect what I expect my kids to be going to, and if they haven't lived up to their end of the bargain, come December, then I probably will take them out. I've homeschooled them.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. 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 I've got a friend of mine who's a teacher, and he homeschools his children as well, and it's absolutely fascinating. Like, okay, that's and for me as well. Like, probably, well, a year or two ago, we were like, yeah, we're gonna homeschool. We're definitely gonna homeschool. We're definitely gonna homeschool. But we kind of moved away from that idea for now, anyway, for various reasons. But I think having that as an option, if it can work, would absolutely be incredible. And yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear your story in that regard.
I'll tell you why very quickly. Obviously, lockdown happened. Before lockdown happened, lockdown happened in March. They had maybe a week before lockdown, they had a parents' evening at my son's school. My youngest son, he was in reception at the time, they turned around and said to my wife, I couldn't make the parents' evening, but they said to my wife that he's able now to recognise his name. Now, this is reception, and they were about that. And my wife came out the room, and she came out straight away and said, she was like,
this is ridiculous.
Something doesn't sit right. I'm not a teacher, but how is Rhythm, is our son, how is he only being able to, we're almost finished reception,
yeah.
He's just recognising his name, not writing his name, recognising. So obviously like, he needs to be able to write a simple sentence.
By that age, yeah.
At that age, but that's age-related expectation. So anyway, lo and behold, lockdown happened, and we got the reports, because, you know, it was the end of the year. We got the reports. My son was below in everything, and I felt guilty and awful that I've let him down, because it's my responsibility. I'm a teacher, and not just that, but I'm his parent, and how is he not being able, how have I picked up on it? My wife felt awful. We didn't pick up on it. And lockdown happened, and I said, you know what? I'll be damned if this is happening to my child. I'll be absolutely damned. And we worked tirelessly hard in just working and making sure that he was at least at his age-related expectation. Fast forward a couple of terms, he went back to school, and the teachers couldn't believe that this was the same child. Now, it's a different teacher because they would have had their transition, etc. But they were expecting someone to come in who was below average, who was, if you like, not academically there. He went back in as a greater depth child, as above average in everything. And
fantastic.
I saw the fact, I witnessed and was there to witness him learn how to read, learn how to write, learn how to just his senses. And this was just in 2 terms. And it was at that, and it was all my boys actually, at that point when I thought, you know what, homeschooling isn't a bad shout, because my children are being affected somehow at school. And it comes back to that point that I made. My children are very clever, but because they are not able to identify as much with the teacher, they ain't learning at their optimum. So you would argue, is the teacher an outstanding teacher if learning isn't happening? And that's where I got from, because learning happened with me, learning happened with mom. So why didn't it happen in that place? And those are the questions that I brought forward to the head teacher, because I needed answers, not the answers that I wanted, because they hid behind, oh, well, it's only one child, we've got 30, blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't stop other children from learning in that environment. So I understand it to a degree, but it doesn't stop other children from learning. So we needed to dig deeper and try and figure out what those issues were. And for me, part is because I don't understand Black children. And I don't think that schools, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I work in schools, but I don't believe that they are safe enough for Black children, Black boys in particular. I don't believe it.
Wow.
And that's, I don't think they're safe.
Oh dear. Safe. Oh my gosh. All right. Safe as far as they're not just going to be, they're not going to be nurtured, and they're just not going to learn as they should, as they can.
Learning, safeguarding, avoidance of adultification, criminalising. All of these things contribute an impact on a child's well-being, mental health. All of these things impact, and it's so funny because I have these discussions all the time with my senior leadership team, who are amazing, and who we all have those open and frank conversations. And one in particular, they're mortified that I'm contemplating and taking my child out of a school institution. They just can't comprehend why I would do that. And I've just seen firsthand the difference that it makes. It makes. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna say for definite. But well-being wise as well, it's important. Like sometimes my children don't even know that they're being targeted. Like as I said, subject access requests. I requested.
You did.
Just request, just to see.
Yeah.
And the one incident that wasn't shared with myself, where my child was told that he couldn't have orange squash. He had to have blackcurrant squash because he's Black, or something like that. And my son just took it with a pinch of salt. Now, for me, that is point blank racism. So then I want to know, and I only knew that, and I wish the school had told me at the time, but obviously receiving it and I'd seen it, then I had those conversations with the children, with the teachers. What work has been done? What work was done with their parents of understanding racial awareness? Why wasn't I told? Because then I was able to have that conversation with my son about racism and about what racism looks like. And some people will say things. My son knew it wasn't quite right, but he didn't know what it was. And it just brings the importance of safety in schools and holding the schools to account. And if parents, I know there's probably 10, but if parents are on here now, or they watch it later, and they want to do anything, the first thing I would implore them to do is request their child's file from school, and just have a look. Just see what your child's up to. That's it. Somebody might come back completely empty, clean as a whistle, no incidents on him or against him, but then it might come back with some that you wasn't aware of. And those are the things that you want to address and try and ensure that these things don't happen again.
Yeah, interesting. And that's really important, that subject access request. It's probably worth just explaining that under, and it'll be a similar thing in other countries as well, but under data protection legislation, we can all request to see any times our personal data has been recorded and used by an institution. You can do it with your employer. You can do it at the school that your teachers are at, and nurseries, I presume, as well. And that's actually a really important tool. Like you say, I can see how that would be really important, particularly where children are having difficulties with schools or with the nursery or whatever. That's one of the things you might want to do as parents, is like you say, is like, well, let's just get the info. Let's see what's being said that might not have been shared with us.
Let's see, just have a look. And I know my brother did it, and my brother was alarmed by the racism over, and I don't know if he's still on it, but over 42 incidents of racism. 42 incidents of racism at a primary school in Birmingham. He had to take his children out of school because of the racism that they were receiving. And this is a primary school. And I don't want to go too much into it because I know that it was a difficult circumstance, and his son did kind of face a permanent exclusion that we fought for long and hard, and if eventually it was overturned and rescinded and absolutely quashed, and the school were held to account, etc., etc. But to get to that point was quite difficult. And the only reason we knew of 42 incidences of racism is because we asked for the subject access request. Little things like being prevented from going to the toilet because it's black, being threatened it was told times of the N-word. And these are primary school children being threatened that he was going to be killed because of his black, and all these obscene racial attacks. Some were reported, some were told to the parents, but some were just swept under the carpet.
So they're recording it, but not telling the parents about it. That's pretty deep. And can I just check? This is in Birmingham, is it? And these are in what kind of areas are these? Are these in quite diverse areas?
So myself and my brother, we moved out of Aston and we came to a more affluent area, Sutton Coldfield.
Yeah.
And predominantly white. So my kids, probably my two boys, are the only one black, one Asian, and one Chinese, and they're all best friends. My son doesn't see the fact that it's just the minorities who have grouped together, and I brought that to the attention of the head teacher as well, and said, just look at this. But so also in Sutton Coldfield, affluent areas, and it was to the point where my brother had to take all out of that school and put them in a more an inner city school where there is less racism. Wasn't safe for them. It just wasn't safe. It just wasn't.
Right. Goodness me. Well, that is that's I didn't expect us to go down that road. You're buffering again, but while we're waiting for Pell to come back, shout out to Dean Okai Senior. Enough respect. Really, really good to have you here. And you're absolutely right that knowing about things like the statutory statutory rights that we have, such as a subject access request, and then like Pell's making the point clearly that we need to learn, we need to become aware, we need to become informed as parents and not just parents, but children in your here we go. Yeah, if we have any children, that's all right. Welcome back, Pell. I was just saying that, like, just reiterating the point anyway, that it's so important for us as parents and just caregivers and just adults who might have parents in our networks or children somewhere in our networks, in our circles. We're all part of families. It's really important for us to start to build up our to learn about the system, to learn how the systems work, to learn what kind of rights that we have, what kind of responsibilities that schools have, that institutions have, and all that sort of stuff, so that you can, come from an informed perspective and engage with these entities and these people. So So yeah, really, really amazing stuff, man. Really, really, really pleased that you've shared all of that. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, I'm just listening. I'm just listening.
Yeah, yeah. So we have gone a lot longer than I thought we were going to go. It's
Yeah.
1 o'clock now, so yeah, we're better. We're better. We're better. Would you be happy to come back? Obviously, you're a busy man. You're a teacher, so your time, particularly daytimes, are going to be busier in a few weeks. But I would love to have you to come back. As often as you can to sort of delve into a little bit more detail on some of these things if you're up for it.
Yeah, listen, Ellie, of course, anything that I could do to help and support and essentially have some sort of influence on our black children within these spaces, I'm more than happy to come back.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was interesting because I saw you first, and it was on Liz's actual Instagram, and you did mention around the characters and going into the school and having those discussions. And can I just quickly ask, I know we're running out of time, but what were the results of that? What happened post?
Nothing really happened, to be honest. So the way it worked, we went in, me and my wife both went in, she's in the chat as well.
Yeah.
We both went in, and it wasn't the main purpose of us going in wasn't necessarily to do with that. It was, we were discussing some issues that we'd, that our son had been having at that time. But that came up, the book came up, and I said, we both said, we told them, there's more than one teacher, we told them about what our son had said and so forth. And, one of them was absolutely flabbergasted and like quite defensive about it.
Yeah.
Like you could see straight away, she was just like, well, that's, she was, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was something on the lines of, well, that's not what it means, or something. Whereas the other one was more kind of like, more just genuinely like, but to be fair, we didn't actually follow up on that. We haven't brought it up again with them. We haven't raised it.
See, what's more alarming for me is then the actual response of when you brought it up to them and it's being so defensive, because with that barrier, nothing is ever going to change. There is a document, it's racial awareness document from the NEU. I think that's also
okay.
It's not an official one from DFE, but it's from the NEU, which is a teacher union.
What's the name of it again? Sorry.
Racial awareness. It's an actual policy, and it speaks about biases and training and etc. That's where the school needs to really start. And I would send an email to the head teacher and say, it's not necessarily the book, because that could just be a misunderstanding and communication, but it's the response afterwards, because the response that I want to hear is one of mortification, just absolutely mortified, and how do we make it better? How do we create these allies so that this doesn't happen again? Because no matter however you look at it, your child, your son, has a perception that was created, that was born, created, and sustained from the school, and the school need to be aware of the images and the perception that they're pushing out. And by denying it or being defensive, it means they're closing off themselves to the possibility of them being biased, being racist, and that's not okay. So I would 100% follow up on that, because
Yeah, well, it's you said earlier that it might be awkward, it might be uncomfortable for us. And that my first instinct was, okay, I don't really want to do that. But you're right, and not even just for my sons, because one of them's leaving, but the other one's still in that nursery. It's not even just for them, and now it's for all the other ones. It's all the other children, all the other families who are going to go through that same nursery. So yeah, well, I'll have to kind of I'll speak to my wife in a bit then, and we'll have to have a conversation about that.
If you message me email, then what I'll do is I'll just send you all the documents, because I know someone mentioned it in the group, PDF documents, etc., that are policies, and if you wanted to push that out to your followers, etc.,
yeah, definitely.
and you can do that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. That's really kind of you. I just want to just draw attention to this last comment before we go. This is Dinokai again, saying, we now have a model for Black Parents Forums. We can further inform and scale for national, borough and county rollout. And this is a conversation me and him were having recently. Because I was asking, is there any kind of organization or union or association or something that can help parents, Black parents in particular, to have these kind of conversations and to give them the tools and tips and so forth? And he mentioned that there are some on a sort of local level. I think in Southwark and Lambeth maybe might have been the other.
Read that report actually.
Yeah. So yeah, this is good. These conversations, I'm so pleased with this conversation, and the fact that it's bringing, you know, the likes of us are becoming connected and starting these conversations, or getting these conversations out in the open, so that we can start to, you know, start to spot each other and realize that, yeah, other people are thinking these things. As yourself, who's working inside schools and doing your ad part as well. Dino Kai Senior is doing a lot of work as well with regard to connecting the dots. Exactly, yeah, as he said there.
100%.
Yeah. So brilliant. Okay, so on that note, thank you so much, Pell. It's been an absolute pleasure, absolute joy to be building with you, breaking bread with you.
Anytime, bro. Anytime. Honestly, seriously, just shout me the next time you need anything, and I'll be there. We make it happen. It's important.
Fantastic, fantastic, cool. All right, well, peace and blessings to you, my brother. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and yeah, let's do this. All right, you too. Bye. Bye.